First off, thank you again for your time, because we have learned that time is the most valuable thing, right?
Yeah, I'm so honored to be here and talk about many deep issues. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Well, it's an honor and a pleasure for us to have you. Maybe a strange question to start with.
Yes.
But we always love, when we have a guest, to ask him, who are you, if you would introduce yourself to someone who has never met you before?
Right. I mean, I am a writer, and human being, who has struggle, ups and downs, and try to learn from them, and then write them in a way that people can understand easily. Yeah. So I would like to bring both spiritual side but at the same time psychological, help.
Wow, that's a very humble yet true description of the human being that you are.
Yes, thank you.
As we have, we had the pleasure to read your first two books, and we did have a sneak peek on your third book.
Yeah.
Is it a labor of love, those books?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, it takes many months and months, to edit and, revise. And, I am basically opening my heart and talking about, things that, I was deeply wounded, and how I was able to going forward. So it was also, process of self-healing in that regard, and also, growing, spiritually growing. So I'm not the finished product. I am struggling, just like we all are. And I wrote this book, in the middle of that struggle. Yeah.
Well, that's something that, like, when we talked about our possibility to have a conversation with you, Sunim, we were amazed that someone who, as a Zen Buddhist, has a base of, to us, very complicated material, be able to bring it in a very human, down-to-earth, and humble way. I think my question is, why do you think that you succeed in bringing all this knowledge to those who maybe beforehand never understood it?
Right. I mean, I try to connect with my intentions. My intention is to actually help people, not to expound the philosophy that I know, So because of it, I oftentimes, I develop that idea, from the conversation that I have with real people. And then real people have real problems, right? So I try to bring that into my writing, and so that people can find it more relevant. Yeah.
That also makes me think that, in a way, the conversations you had, as you say, with real people, with real problems, did that help you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it opens my heart. Yeah, it's like yesterday in Booktopia, I met this wonderful, nice gentleman who came up to me, and he was basically opening his heart, how much suffering he went through lately, and how much my book helped him. It was like, a sense of vulnerability, and like he was in tears and I was in tears, and that beautiful moment, something like that, I just feel so grateful that I get to witness that.
That's a very intense connection you have with a person, right?
Through my writing. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. I would have never imagined that I would have that kind of relationship with somebody far, far away from South Korea, right? And yet, they are connecting. So I'm extremely grateful.
Through your first and second book, you taught us a lot. I mean, the first two books taught us, in my humble opinion, to love the imperfect and to slow down. Your new book is a bit more it isn't the easiest book in the world, if you pardon me of saying it that way. Can you tell us why this book differs from the first two?
Because I go deeper, right? I talk about, my experience of jealousy, my experience of being vulnerable, and my relationship with my father, how much unconsciously I have internalized his own worldview, and how much I have that has affected me. But at the same time, I am trying to go beyond, all this, subconscious passing. I mean, the things that I have learned from my, parents. So I think people, who are going through, burnout or, common human feelings of, what people often label as negative feelings, I think they will find some help in it.
So even the hard feelings, the bad feelings, if I may put it that way, they teach us?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think we learn when we are going through lots of suffering, right? When things are like rosy, everything is fine, then you just glide. You don't pause and self-reflect. Only things are tough, something unexpected, thing happens. Then you say, oh, wait a minute, I took everything for granted, and maybe, I should look into deeper part of me, and where maybe some things that I haven't become brave enough to look at it and accept it. Yeah. So, yeah.
What always amazes me, I've seen several of your talks. I heard a few of your interviews, and you talk about things that a lot of people fear, but you seem to find happiness in them.
Mm-hmm.
Is that because you embrace those parts?
Yeah, because in every shadow, there is a light in it. So in order to embrace your own shadow, you also have to investigate, what is the light in this dark aspect of myself, things that I've been repressed, things that I was in denial, and let me just pause and let's take a look at it, because those are the things unconsciously are controlling us, things that we are unaware of, and they are the one that actually have biggest and most powerful decision making, I think.
You talk a lot about suffering.
Mm-hmm.
We also talk a lot about suffering. We think a lot about it. I think we both sort of agree that trying to find meaning in the suffering is a useful way of looking at life.
Mm-hmm.
Questions we get asked a lot in our community is the question, how do I know I can find meaning in this suffering, and the balance in this is just suffering as an end?
Mm.
Do you understand the question?
Yes. By reflecting, why it has happened, what's the cause, what's the area that I actually didn't pay attention to, maybe I could have spent more time, taking good care of my body, or my mind, or my relationships, or my purpose, try to connect with my higher purpose in my life. Maybe, this suffering allows me to pause and reflect that. So I think, whenever there is door closed, a new door is bound to open. But the thing is, we do not know what that it's going to entail. So it's a scary place to be, because you know that you're going to lose something, and yet it's not clear what it is that you're going to gain. So in this space of uncertainty, the question is, can I be brave enough to march into it and maybe see some of the lesson and maybe opportunity that I never thought about before? Yeah.
Do you feel like suffering is an essential part of the self-healing journey you talk about?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Suffering is there to teach us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think we are becoming more mature, as we are seeing my own suffering, and then this allows me to connect with other people who are also going through difficult, time. So
I've been doing a lot of my own research and reading into Stoicism, Taoism, and I see a lot of connections in between. And I've been burning to ask you this question since I know we would have this conversation. You've been traveling around the world, I would say, to talk about self-healing, about self-care. And I was just wondering, do you see big differences between different places in the world concerning self-care, the conversation, how people talk about it, how people think about it?
I think in general, the trend, the tendency is similar in my opinions.
Really?
But some, Asian country, whether it's, Korea or Japan or, Indonesia, they tend to have a higher, expectation on a person. You ought to behave in a certain way, right? Like if you are a man, you are supposed to behave in this way. If you're a woman, you're supposed to behave in this way, especially if the society is, pretty much heavily influenced by religious ideas. In Korea, it's a Confucius ideas, that's pretty much, alive. Then there's a chasm between what I really want to become or who I really am versus how I can portray myself to the world, how I can show up to myself so that I don't become criticized or I don't become the victim of some sort of people's hatred. You know what I mean? So there's some the space, some dichotomy, between the two, and that's where people find it hard to pay attention to themselves, because maybe while they're growing up, their parents were saying, "Don't be so selfish," that taking good care of yourself is just you are being selfish. Voicing what you want is you are being selfish. Then you have to do a lot of unlearning. Yeah, and then so I think it's regardless of whether we are talking about Western culture versus Eastern culture. I think that dichotomy is prevalent.
Why do you think parents say this to their children?
Oh, because they have their own fear, yeah, and their own anxiety. Their own hurt, unhealed wounds. They all carry. So those hurts are inherited. I mean, what's the word? Those hurts are passing down, unconsciously from a parents to a child, and then so sometimes you are inheriting it from your grandparents, wounds. My book actually talk about that, because as I was investigating, what's happening? Why is that I'm always in a hurry, although my book is about, slowing down, why am I so busy all the time? This is not good, because I am not practicing what I'm preaching, so, and then I realized that it came from, the deeply wounds, the psychological wounds that my grandparents were carrying, during the Korean War, and also, during the Japanese, colonization, period. So that, wounds has never been healed properly. So they are subconsciously, just passing it down to from parents to child. So I think as a parent, it's important to pause and maybe, where is this wound that I have not healed completely? And maybe I am unconsciously subjecting my children, to that wound, and perpetuating the same kind of, suffering.
It sounds like trying to break the cycle. While you were explaining that, it made me think that Jeff and you have something in common. I read somewhere, correct me if I'm wrong, I read somewhere that you used to be a radio DJ.
Oh, yeah, briefly.
Briefly,
yes,
okay.
yes.
Well, my question is this.
Yes.
Jeff edits all of this.
Mhm. Wow.
He is a sound technician
Mhm.
of top tier.
Okay.
And he always like goes next level. And when he lets us hear it, we don't really hear the difference
Mm.
because we're not that good at it.
Yeah.
But he's a perfectionist in making that. And I heard you talk about your radio DJ career.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken,
Yes, you're right.
there
yeah.
was some sort
Yeah.
of perfectionism in that too, right?
Right. Yeah. You know, when I first started, I didn't like my own voice. You know, I think it happens. You know, all the time. A lot of people, they don't like to listen to themselves. You know, and I mean that's an invitation to more reflect. You know, why is that I do not like my own voice? So some people suggest that I should speak it like in a low tone, that
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
yes. They'll be a lot more appealing to the listening audience. So I try to imitate that, and then I realized that nobody really cared. I realized that I only care. It's like a lot of perfectionism. The problem with that is that we have our own certain idea about how it should be, and then only then you'll be okay, right? But that idea is all just within my mind, it's not shared, with other people, So I remember, when I was in graduate school, I had a wonderful professor who was also a perfectionist, and he had a hard time, publishing articles, but he's such a wonderful, scholar. So even a mediocre would have been a really good one, right? But he just had a hard time letting go. So I think if we reach like 90%, of what we think is good, I think we should be brave enough to let it go. Yeah.
And did writing your book, The Love for, where you describe how to love the imperfect, help you yourself with that?
Yes. My writing is also. I'm writing for myself as well, as well as helping other people, right? So I jokingly said that sometimes I feel depressed. I actually picked up my book and read, and then I was like, "Wow, this guy is really wise." Then why am I not wise? You know what I mean? So, yeah.
It works on you. Your book works on you, and it works on a lot of other people too. So that's good.
Yes.
That's
yeah.
good.
I mean, I think subconsciously that's the direction that I wanted to go. It's because I couldn't slow down, and I just wanted to write about it. So that I could maybe have opportunity.
Your own self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes. Yes.
You talk a lot about perfectionism, obviously. You talk a lot about the perfectionist teacher, the perfectionist parent. And I've always been wondering in my mind, would it be better to have the perfect parent or the imperfect parent? The perfect teacher or the imperfect teacher? And I know you probably have some kind of opinion about it, because I remember you speaking in some kind of talk about the perfect teacher.
Wow. I think the perfect teacher would be somebody who's fully, accepting his or her not only the light but also shadow. So yeah, not necessarily somebody exhibit high moral standard all the time, but somebody who sees dichotomy, like how I can be very ridiculous, I can be so selfish, and jealous. But I also have another side, which is very compassionate, loving and caring, So seeing the whole spectrum of who we are and embracing it, and so thereby, as I'm accepting myself, I am accepting my child, because only when I begin to accept myself, I can, to that degree, I am accepting the world.
This gives me so much to think about.
We'll have so much more extra conversations because of this. So
Okay,
this is your
yes.
fault, but it's a good one. If I may, I'd like to ask, when you taught us to slow down,
Mhm.
Is slowing down
Mhm.
the same thing as stopping something?
Actually, in the original Korean title was things that you can see only when you pause. That was the original title.
Really?
Yeah. I think, only when we pause, then we can actually, see what's really happening around us. Yeah. And also, pausing also means, pausing our struggle to get somewhere, I'm just wishing that I wish this was different, we have this internal, monologue, always feeling it's not completely right. I want the water to be, you know what I mean? Like I want the temperature. Yeah. Like a little bit, we always find a little bit of, things that's not quite right, zeroing on negative, whenever you are going into any kind of new situations. And, however, if you can just pause all those, dialogue, inner dialogue, and you realize that what caused me to suffer isn't necessarily the circumstance. It is my reaction, my commentary, on the circumstance. So I just, make those commentary pause, stop. And because that's the one that is, making me feel very bewildered and unhappy.
Am I understanding it correctly that way you see that the circumstance is not at fault as you're going through hard times, but sometimes it's your own thoughts around those circumstances?
Right. I talk about that in this book, why we are not happy, the reason is because we always wants to our mind wants to either go somewhere and grasp something, or whatever that is coming to us, we want to resist. So this two, movement, that is to try to go and grab something that I want, or resist that which I do not like. So these two tendency of our mind that creates, a lot of suffering. So then the question is, how can I reduce, resistance, for example, because the less I resist, the more accepting I am, the happier I become, calmer and peaceful, more I feel. So it's not really about the circumstance outside, because circumstance constantly changes, right? And then maybe those circumstances, the situation, you might find it very happy and wonderful, but somebody else can find it very annoying, and so it's nothing is objective, So, but this tendency to either resist or go and grasp something, you can see that as universal, and that's where the suffering comes. So whenever you feel like really, overly stressed, and notice where you are resisting, and then also notice where you are trying to grasp something. If you can just let go.
Do you mean by grasping? Do you mean sort of controlling it?
Yes, controlling to a certain degree, yes. But also at the same time, like the feeling that I wish things are a little bit better, different. Like you go to a restaurant, and then you are seated, but I wish my table was next to the window, and because of it, I feel a little you know what I mean? It's not perfect, you know what I mean? Like it
could be better.
Yeah, it could be better, right? And then, so the choice is, should I just complain, within my mind the whole time, having dinner? Yeah, like
that happens.
Yeah, complaining the waiter, how come they are not treating me right? How come, I didn't get the table next to the window? Basically ruining entire meal. And then, but you can say, hey, I don't want to play that game of, trying to either grasp something or resist. By toning it down, I feel much more peaceful and yeah.
It seems to me that acceptance in that way gives you freedom.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yes. Oftentimes people come and ask, questions about their lives, And it's about, they're struggling because they cannot accept the things they cannot change, right? So what do I do? Things that you don't have any control over, and yet you are struggling because you wanna somehow go there and change it exactly the way you like it, right? So in that case, I think we should realize what we are doing, and by doing that, we are actually creating more suffering for myself.
If I can ask you a question about this, it strikes me as the quote, it's not reality that discomforts us, it's more like our opinion about reality that discomforts us.
Yes.
Your analogy about the restaurant is very striking to me because we get this question every day on our Instagram or social media. It's about the balance. It's about, I want to sit at the window, but I also want to find contentment in sitting right here. And people ask it like, how can I give space to my own personal struggles and find balance in caring for other people or other things? Let's say external conflicts out of my control. Let's say external conflicts on the other side of the world, to describe it a big fake. That's a question we get every day. I am suffering, but my problem doesn't seem as serious as the problem of the person next to me. That's a question we get every day. How would you start to think about an answer to this very complex question?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the pitfall, one of the ways to make yourself really, unhappy is try to control things that you have no control over. So, rather than trying to control how other people feel, why don't you see if you can, do a little more self-care and then make yourself heal from some of the anxiety, unhappiness that you're having. And then, only then, you can go out and actually help other people, because you feel a lot better, When we are, in a very negative state, we also pull everybody else into our level, right? So
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that.
So I think what we can offer is we get healed and then we bring joy, because of my new state. Yeah,
It's a good base. If you're healthy, if you're strong in a way, you can take care of others.
absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
That made me think. I read somewhere that you if I'm paraphrasing, I'm sorry, that you said you can learn more from the body than the intellect mind.
Yes.
Does that mean when you're looking for that self-care, should we
take care of the body? Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Yes. Yesterday at Booktopia, the woman came up and she said, my daughter is suffering from anxiety. What can she do? I told her, does she sleep 7 hours a day? Or like the next question is, does she go out and walk in nature? Does that become a part of her routine? Does she eat, healthy meal? Those fundamental, things. Once your body feels better, then you realize that, oh, things are actually improving. I can, I feel more, positive. But at the same time, I have to say that our body is wiser than we give credit for. That is, our body knows what's happening much quicker because it's connected to our unconsciousness. So I like what we call gut feeling.
Gut feeling.
Yes. You just know, immediately. You don't know why, that is the case, but you just know, something is not right. So our body is really intelligent. So I think we have to honor our body and see if we can care for our body first,
So putting more trust in our body is worth it. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like feeling this trust of meeting someone new, right? That you say, feels a bit off.
Right. Yeah, and it's actually, it's in your shoulder. Sometimes you feel very tense, like, although you say I'm fine, but maybe you're not fine, just examine, which part of your body is really tensing up and why that is the case, and, let it, loosen it up.
I honestly believe, well, we try to take care of our bodies, but we see a lot of people struggling with it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem an easy feat to take time to listen to your body and what am I feeling? Why am I feeling what I'm feeling? And that's not your mind doing it, but that's your body doing it. Right?
Because if you are primarily, identify yourself with your own ego, then you will do that. You'll just ignore, disregard, what your body is feeling, because I am ego, I am just thinking, mind, nothing else. And somehow I can, if I have a good positive thoughts, maybe I'll be able to change my life, But actually it requires your body work as well. And I think our body also remembers, some of the trauma, so healing, and so healing, which part of your body is still tense up without knowing, like, let that part of your body, talk about whichever story that the body wants to talk about, let it come out. And then also let it express, through dance or through hiking, so I think it's really important
or radio DJing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You would you say that everyone in the world needs healing in some way?
Yes, I think so. I think I would say more, along the line of acceptance, self-acceptance. So because unconsciously we might be putting some parts of us down and try not to see it, and maybe in a denial, you want to suppress it. Just because you suppress it doesn't mean that it goes away. You will have a huge impact on your life without knowing, why am I feeling this way? Or you're stuck in a certain kind of pattern in a relationship and keep repeating the same pattern again and again.
Talking about patterns, and you mentioned thoughts just 2 minutes ago. If there was a competition for overthinking, I would probably be in the running for the gold medal. So actually, I slept very badly last night because I woke up at 3:30 a.m. and I started to think and overthink and think again. And I couldn't break my pattern even last night. It was also because I was very excited to do this conversation, but still, it happens to me a lot of time. I overthink a lot of time. Just a question from me personally to you, because I've been struggling with this so hard for so many years, all my life. What would be a good starting point for me to try to break the pattern of addictive overthinking?
Yeah, I think, first thing we can do is, I am overthinking, become aware of what's happening, right? So, and then once you are aware that you are doing and you have some choice, what am I going to do? I would recommend that you would just stand up and go outside and walk in nature. Yeah, that helps, like it tremendously helps. So rather than just sitting down and just thinking, move your body, especially getting in touch with beautiful nature, whether it's an ocean or forest, trees or valley, whatever that is, just go out, take a walk, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And at the same time, I noticed that people who are suffering, they couldn't go back to sleep after waking up, in the middle of the night. And then you are just listening to your own internal monologue. Yeah. And in order to break that cycle, you can actually listen to, there are so many podcasts, about, sleep story, just listen to sleep story. It's really interesting because as you are listening to the story, you cannot think.
That is true.
Yes.
You're a wise man.
It also makes me think about, you mention sometimes the emptiness and the silence, right? Within overthinking, is there room in emptiness and in silence or overthinking?
Well, I think we only tend to identify ourselves with what I would call like manifest part of ourselves, that is like thoughts or emotions. But there's also unmanifest, side of us, which I would call awareness. So we can become aware of our own habits, own emotions, but that which is aware doesn't have any shape or form. Like when you say awareness, can you say, awareness has any form or shape? Particular? Yeah. So awareness itself doesn't have any, shape or form, and that's why we call it empty, However, just because it's empty doesn't mean that it's dead. It's alive, It's alive and very much always on, so to speak. So that even if you had a really deep sleep at night, you wake up and then you say to yourself, "Oh, I had a wonderful sleep, and I know that I didn't have any dream." The question is, how do you know that you didn't have a dream? We know this awareness is always on. So I would say that whenever you find yourself just overthinking, maybe I can step out and become identifying myself with my own awareness as opposed to just a thought. That is, when you say, "Oh, I'm aware of my own thoughts," in that moment, in that split second, you just step outside of your own thoughts.
Like Descartes says, the European philosopher, "I think, so I am." A bit like that?
I think, and I can become aware.
Yeah.
Yeah. But my awareness is not a thought.
I have to think about this for a while.
Oh, that's a heavy one. Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yeah. Awareness is not it's not limited to any kind of, the thoughts or emotions. Yeah.
Does that also imply that our awareness is a base of a lot of answers we are seeking?
Ultimately, I think we don't want to be defined by X, Y, and Z. If somebody come and say, "You are this, you are that," you are, let's say, you are introverts and you are very, very depressed. Like if they like label us, like define us in a certain way, that we don't like it. Why we don't like it? Because in our gut, we know we are unlimited being.
I really love this.
Yes. And so that anybody who wants to limit us, and label us, "You are such and such," then there's a natural, revulsion, a natural, like, I cannot agree with that, like,
It doesn't feel right.
yeah, don't box me in. Yeah.
I do find some kind of paradox in this because over here in Belgium and when we look at the United States, we see like a peaking search on the quest for individuality and identity. And it's something we talk about a lot. Where does this come from, this quest for identity? Because we, today in this society in 2023, it seems like a lot of people seem to want or need labels or feel the need to put it on each other.
I think that's the activity of our ego. That is not the activity of our awareness. There's a difference. But, realize that one of our eternal homework, while as a, living as a human being, is to learn who we are. Who am I? That's the eternal question. And then in order to solve that, you may say, "Oh, I will identify myself, with body or race or gender, nationality, religion, certain like social status or family." If you identify yourself with that, notice that you are in a way, reducing yourself to only that. And at the same time, that which, if you were to say, "Oh, I am, I am like race, like I'm Asian, for example, then there is awareness, that which is aware of the fact that I am Asians. Do you know the difference? You know, the difference is that you are not limited to your own race. You know, I think we often like to define ourselves through stories, you know, certain kind of narratives. You know, I am such and such because I had this and that kind of life. Yeah. So, however, the invitation is to see beyond your narrative, you know?
See the potential.
Yeah. And a lot of time people are stuck in their faulty narrative, you know, about themselves. You know, and so like what psychoanalysis they do is when you go see a psychotherapist, they try to edit the story that you have, you know, instead of just looking at the shadow, you look at all the light that you had, you know. Like for example, you know, my father, you know, I talk about it in my book, you know, my father, because he grew up really poor, and he had this idea of the world is uncaring, and if I don't work hard for myself and for my, you know, family, there will be nobody who's going to come and help us. You know, that kind of, you know, belief, that very, you know, lonely place to be, you know. I think, you know, just, okay, I'm like losing the train of thought. What it is that I was going to say. I was going to say something.
Your father, his identity, was it that he was a hardworking man that made him a bit lonely?
Okay, got it. I remember. Yes. So my father, there are a certain aspect of my father, which became my shadow, to be honest. That is, I did not like it. You know, I didn't like certain, you know, aspect of my father, because he was very generous to us, but he was very cold to the world. You know, he was very stingy. You know, he didn't, you know, provide, you know, the same level of care to the strangers. So I find it very upsetting, you know, especially when I was in teenager, you know, I judged my father very harshly, you know, how come you were so ungenerous, you know? But on the flip side, you know, of that shadow, there is so much, you know, love for our family, you know, and there's a boy within him who's terrified of, you know, like when he was young and the war was going on, and in order to have like one more potato, you know, because he had like 7 siblings, he had to eat really quickly so that he can eat another potato. You know what I mean? You know, so that I begin to see not only that he has this shadow, but also, you know, there is a light in it, you know, which has lots of, you know, caring and love for his own family, you know, responsibleness. You know, he was like so diligent and, you know, dedicated to his work. And it's the same quality has this both sides. You know, some people say, oh, like somewhat negative side, but also very positive side. So I think, you know, coming to embrace both of them, it is part of our, you know, work as a human being.
Do I understand correctly that without that shadow your father had, there wouldn't have been the light that he shared with you?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And we tend to just zero in on all those, you know, negative side, you know, while, you know, overlooking positive side. The same trait has both negative and positive, right? And so when you are looking at your parents or your children, for that matter, if the children exhibit your own shadow, then you will not like your children. That aspect of your child, you will not like it. And so you would just want to punish him or her, you know. So, yeah, so I would say that coming to terms with your own shadow and try to embrace it wholly, you know, that can be super beneficial.
That kind of brings me full circle to your new book, Dingen die je hoop geven. It's if I'm remembering correctly, the English title is When Life Doesn't Go Your Way.
Yes, when things don't go your way.
When things don't go your way. Does it help us embrace those shadows? is that the tough question we have to ask for ourselves?
Yes. It allows us to confront our own shadow. Like Rumi said, that the crack is where the light comes in. Yeah. So the only way to overcome pain is going through the pain, right? So I think this being courageous enough to face your own things that you are too afraid to face, and have a courage to actually look into it, and then realize that maybe it wasn't as threatening or scary as I thought it was. Yeah.
You've
I imagine, yeah,
shared a lot of personal stories in your books and in your talks too. I'm just dying to ask, was there a moment in your life, a shadow in your life, that you were amazed that taught you something super valuable? And if so, would you care to share it with us?
Yeah. I talk about my inner child, in my book. I think we all have inner child that needs some of the attention and love.
An extra potato.
Huh?
An extra potato.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And as an adult, we can choose to take good care of the inner child, all the things that you weren't able to receive, and you were depending on other adults to take good care of you. But your parents, for example, they were just too busy, or they didn't have resources, to be able to provide what you need. But you can say to my own inner child that I'm not going away. My issue was the fear of abandonment. I was super afraid of being abandoned, and I could not quite understood, why I felt that way. Why is it so hard for me to just be alone? Why I'm so sometimes needy, some aspect of myself that I really did not like at all, But I just look into it, face it, what it is. Why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? And then I realized that it came from my childhood trauma. Yeah. So like healing that trauma was a huge deal for me.
I think it's incredibly humbling to hear a wise man like you admit something like that, because you are telling us, in all honesty, you have struggled with this. There are times you're still thinking about it, dealing with it, right?
Yes.
So this should be something that we too can try, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm not wise. I don't know.
Well, wiser.
Right. I mean, I'm wearing this, persona of a monk, and I'm fully aware that I'm wearing them. I am not my persona. You see what I mean? Like behind this, just a regular human being. Just like we all are. And also, there's a concept of spiritual bypassing. That is, just because I am like, a spiritual person and, Zen, monastic, whatever, then I don't have anger, I don't have any attachment, and that's really ridiculous, that is basically saying, you are suppressing it so much.
Because you don't choose to be angry.
Yeah. But the thing is, only when we embrace it, real joy comes out, like maybe you might have met some people, maybe school principal, I don't know, like something like pastor, somebody who's always proper, and yet and they always say the right thing, and yet you feel like I never felt like I met that person, because it's
a mask, right?
Yeah. So we are all wearing this persona mask so that we can interact. There's nothing wrong with that. But the problem is, if you think you are the mask, and that's how you operate, then that can be a problem.
Like the movie, The Mask.
Yeah.
I watched it last weekend, that's why. I have maybe one more question for you before I thank you for your time with us together. You talk about this mask. I think social media brings a lot of continuous challenges to us as an individual. What would you say, or what advice would you have, or an idea to share with someone who compares how many potatoes they have to the next person on social media, because social media does that exactly? How would you, what vision could you share to that person who always compares themselves on social media?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there will be always somebody better than you, and you know, better looking than you are, have more money. You know, there will be always somebody better, right? And then, but if you just look down, and there's also equally a lot of people who would have loved to be in your situation, right? So I think we have to, you know, bring and invite this practice of gratitude. You know, how grateful we are for what we have, you know, already. And choose to actually enjoy, you know, like bringing this attention to the present moment. That's what makes us happier, you know, because just because you have a really expensive, nice Michelin star, you know, meal, it doesn't make you automatically, you know, happy, you know, if you are not actually bringing your attention, awareness to the meal. You know, if you can think about all those things that I have to do, then you will be eating mindlessly, you know, without actually knowing, fully enjoying, savoring the food. So I think, you know, regardless of which situation you are, if you can just pause and bring your mind to the present moment and, you know, really feel what is there. You know, it can be a coffee that you're having. Or it can be a, you know, nice smile that I see you, you too. Yeah. This, you know, this feeling of connection and joy. I think that's where the magic is.
We shouldn't be blind for those enjoying moments, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know for a fact that the coming days and weeks, him and I will have a lot of different talks because of you again. But it's with a lot of pleasure I put the fault on you, because you helped us connect even better.
Oh yeah,
with your viewpoints, your way of thinking, and I believe honestly there will be a lot of viewers and listeners who will have discovered new ways of taking a look at themselves.
Yeah.
My final question is just this: you've done your third book now.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to those who have a little bit of fear?
Mm-hmm.
To look into it?
Well, my book has a lot of beautiful photos, illustrations.
It's a nice cover.
Yes. So, you know, and then it's easy to read. You know, it's not the dense writing. It has a lot of empty space. And, you know, if you can just, and you don't have to finish it from the beginning to the end. You could, whichever chapter that interests you. Like, for example, if you are, you know, dealing with the issue of loneliness, you know, you can just zero in on that. Or if you are dealing with the, you know, issue of burnout, you can just read that chapter. Yeah.
Well, once again, we thank you, Haemin Sunim, for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you for teaching us in ways that we still haven't discovered yet.
Okay. Thank you so much.